Some people really have nothing better to do. Wait. I bet it was these guys.
The other day I noticed that Silent Hill The Short Message was free, and with that being within my tight budget, I decided to give it a go. Now this is the first Silent Hill I have played because back in the day people said Silent Hill was like Resident Evil. Thinking that was the case, I bummed off Silent Hill games as I was not a fan of the early Resident Evils. I later found out the games were not alike and couldn't help the feeling that I had missed out on something special. Actually, now that I think of it, I did play a little bit of the PT demo, and like most people, I thought that it was half decent. Even though it was just walking down a repeating corridor, it had an interesting mystery to it, and it wasn't the typical jump scare deal. From what I remember of it, PT didn't rely on being scary because it was dark, with a few horror house noises thrown in. PT was foreboding, unsettling, and atmospheric. It also caught me off guard here and there. To be honest, I didn't do a massive amount of it because I was skeptical about how long it would be able to keep my attention, and something else had it at the time. That being said, I do recall thinking at some point something does actually have to kill me. Having the atmosphere is great, but that can only go on for so long before it becomes the norm and loses its desired effect. And when something does eventually kill, all fear is then lost. This is the main issue I have with these glorified walking sims. It is so difficult to keep the suspense over an extended period of time and deliver a significant punchline that climaxes the build-up without being a one-trick pony. It is why, in my opinion, Amnesia: The Dark Descent is still the only horror game worth playing, as it has everything going for it. But that's enough of Amnesia, I'm talking about Short Messages. This one has nothing to do with PT from what I can tell. However, it feels very familiar, as like with many low-effort horror games, I'm yet again walking down dark corridors, which has no effect on me. We play as what's-her-name, who has the typical young person issues, such as not getting enough likes on social media. I feel your pain. Our girl is painfully insecure, so likes to blame herself for things that are out of her control. So just your average emotionally crippled kid then. This kid comes with the relatable baggage of having a neglectful parent when she was a child, and the not so relatable baggage of a friend committing suicide. The suicide was somehow our girl's fault because she was jealous of her friend that committed suicide for being closer to her other friend. Anyway, the game is pretty easy to break down. Walk around, find newspaper clippings and journal entries which add a little bit more to the story, then you run away from the cliché Asian ghost girl. Now, if you're one of those people that use the same method as me to get through Outlast, you'll be right at home here. That tried and true method being run like a prick to find the exit. But unlike in Outlast or Alien, for that matter, there is no hiding, so you lack any other choice but to mindlessly run around like a prick in a maze of rooms and corridors. A little tip, try and keep track of where you're going, so if you do die, you know where not to go next time. Easier said than done because it all looks the same. Nevertheless, it boils down to trial and error. The game does spice it up a bit by getting us to look for numbers in a school corridor to open our locker. It seems that on top of everything else, our girl has early onset dementia, thus has forgotten the code she uses multiple times a day. Maybe it's the medication she's on, but in any case, it's never too early to get a head start by reading the waiting room brochures at the GP. Let's get to the biscuit. Is it scary? Dementia? Bloody hell yes. Short message? No. The only thing that chases you in between collecting various bits to read is the aforementioned Asian girl. When she's killed you once, you've seen all the game has to offer. That's the worst thing that can happen to you. So after you've popped your cherry, the parts in which you run away from the ghost loses the little scare factor it had to begin with. I quickly felt that she was more annoying than anything, as she was the only thing preventing progress in the story. The problem I have always had with these games is that because there are so many of them, it is hard to do something new within the limited scope, away from collecting things and running away from things. Or, as in most cases, a thing. The story itself did little to persuade me to carry on with it, as I have essentially done it many times before in a different skin. Being chased comes with the usual heavy breathing. Our girl, though petrified, still manages to run around with her phone out, which works as an indicator telling us how close the ghost girl is. Having the phone doesn't make sense because early on the phone dies, but then it just starts working again for reasons. I suppose the ghost girl couldn't text us if it had no charge. I didn't know charging phones was a ghost power, but there you go. So it didn't take long before I stopped playing because there was a point where I had to run around and collect photos. These photos unlocked chains from a door. I thought that I got them all, however I was missing one and the ghost Mr. Socko'd me again. That didn't matter because I'd seen enough to know that there was little point carrying on because this game doesn't do enough different from many other horror games out there to keep me invested. I suppose you could say that the modern narrative is unique and interesting, but that's subjective, and I don't feel that this is really aimed at my demographic. I mean, I couldn't even remember the girl's name for this review, that's how much I cared. Now, with these types of games, I always feel that they would be better off as short films rather than a game. I mean, if they wanted to stand out, the least they could have done was put in unique puzzles to break it up a little bit, or add some kind of weapon to slow the ghost down. Hiding from her would have added some suspense, though we've seen it all before many times. Which makes me ask the question, what's the point in doing this? It adds nothing to the genre and it feels one step away from shovelware. Again, what can you do with this limited scope? The ghost girl herself just beelines towards you with little to no animation while you run around going in and out of doors like that classic bit in Scooby-Doo. All that being said, I did get one laugh out of it though, and that was when the ghost girl chased me around in circles. It felt like running around the dining room table to avoid a beating from an older sibling. Now that's trauma for you. Make a game about that. Hello Neighbour meets Among the Sleep, but make the deaths brutal with consequences.